Welcome, one and all, to the court where everything matters, especially points, and in this court we debate only the finest topics in the Star Trek universe. I am your host, Q, not the Q, but a Q certainly, and joining me in my most equitable court of humble opinions, I am joined by one Nifty Mittens and one Jenos and Nifty. Hello, my wonderful contestants. How are you in this fine day in the continuum? A little
Things
bit
are
more
great.
enthusiasm.
Glad to be here.
No, I'm good. And apologies in advance. I cannot be loud.
Oh no!
But let me know if I'm ever too quiet.
What is causing your quietness? What is causing your? There's going to have to be a reasonable objection to count for the points today.
A very important business meeting is occurring in another room.
I see.
Well, I'll be as loud as I want. Ha ha ha!
I think that's automatically a point. No, I won't. I won't be that unfair yet. But the points will come hard and fast. This week on Prose and Cons, we are discussing or we are debating, not discussing. This is going to be a hot debate, which everyone in the chat should certainly foster their opinions for. But who is the best first officer in all of Starfleet? And that is up to you two to decide and debate. Please tell me first, Nifty, who you are representing today in this humble court.
His name is practically impossible to pronounce by humans, but we know him as Spock.
Yeah. And one Jenos, who are you representing today?
William T. Riker.
Interesting. And interesting, the Battle of the First Officers, the two most prominent First Officers in Starfleet. You might ask yourself, well, I already know the answer. Of course you do. But these two fine gentlemen shall be deciding for us, and I'm going to bring the text up on the screen momentarily so we know what we're talking about. So if you are... Oh, gosh, that's all over there. Of course, the Continuum's having a few issues today. There we go. There we go. Right, let's put that there. Okay, who is the best first officer? On my left, or my right, depending on stages, we have Nifty representing Spock, and Jenos defending one William T. Riker. Now, the object of the game is to score as many points as possible. How many did you score points? Well, that is entirely up to your opponent. We will be going through 4 rounds. The first round, which will be opening statements. You shall be delivering a 2-minute monologue where your opponent's side can object if they find something that is maybe something problematic, maybe something they disagree with on a fundamental level. However, it is up to the judge to decide whether that objection should be sustained or the other one. What's the other one? Remind me. I know, but I'm just testing you.
Overruled.
Overruled. Well done.
I get a point for that.
Not yet. Hold on, the point barrier has not been unleashed yet. Yeah, so if they do object, then there is a point for the side that I decree is more reasonable in their opinion. Then you carry on till the end of the 2 minutes, and it flips to the other side. Please, go on.
And sorry, objection, that does not apply to the opening statement, though, right?
It does apply to the opening statements and the closing
so you can...
which I'll get to later. So opening and closing statements, you shall be able to object. But
not the other rounds.
Not as such. The next following round after the opening statement will be evidence gathering. You shall be asked to provide 2 pieces of evidence to support your case. Once you've presented 1 piece of evidence, the opposing side will be able to ask questions and points are scored depending on how solid your case is for those pieces of evidence. After that, you will be doing cross-examination. You'll be able to ask your opposite up to 2 questions. And depending on how they answer, the points will go either way. Then conclude with another 2-minute section to deliver your final statements. And that can be objected. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game, it is not just declared the winner, but who is scientifically, objectively, within all of the cosmos, who is the best first officer in all of Starfleet. So, to begin with their first opening statement, please let me start. Nifty, I have a Q's Android phone here ready with a timer. I would have an on-screen one, but that wasn't working. Some fluctuations, a black hole anomaly in the continuum, something like that. Who knows? So please One Nifty Mittens, please start your opening statement. 2 minutes now.
Well, Spock, over various ranks, served impeccably as the first officer for James T. Kirk. He proved time and again that his use of logic from his Vulcan side was a valuable asset, but also proved that his humanity could also step in and save the day when needed. He was never afraid to tell Kirk what he needed to hear. Examples being such as having to defeat Gary Mitchell, one of his dearest friends. The first officer's duty is to ensure that the captain does what is right, not what is easy or what his heart may want. Also, he literally sacrificed himself in his role because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. So he proved time and again that he was more than capable as a first officer, while not even neglecting his other role as a science officer. He was also very adept at pretty much anything he was tasked with, and even diplomacy while a first officer. So he really had it all. He was a bit of a Swiss Army knife first officer. And so for that reason, he's the best first officer that Starfleet had seen and has ever seen.
You still have 30 seconds on the clock. Please continue.
I think I'll just cede the time at the moment. I can make more compelling arguments later when we have facts presented to dispute.
I will give Jenos an extra 20 seconds there. But since you got to the end of your section without being objected, I'm going to reward you 2 points for completing that section completely flawlessly. I'm also going to give you the opportunity to steal one of Jenos's points. So Jenos has now -1 point for not interjecting.
You can't see what I don't have.
This is an equitable court, please.
Get to your feet, criminals!
Okay, in which case, Jenos, please, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and give you an extra 20 seconds on your clock. However, I will say if you do not use them all, there will be points spare and there will be points lost. Oh no, that's 1 hour. Hang on, I don't know how to use my Q phone. 1 second, 2, 10, there we go, 2 minutes. No, more than that, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Are yours, the floor is yours, please. Begin.
All right. So here we are talking about William T. Riker as the finest first officer ever to serve in Starfleet. So we should really hear it from Jean-Luc Picard himself. Taken from the year 2365 from the episode Peak Performance. This is a direct quote from Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He is simply the finest officer with whom I have ever served. So how can you go wrong hearing this specific and glowing kudos from Jean-Luc Picard, arguably the finest starship captain who has ever lived? Now, Riker was first officer to not only 1, not only 2, but 3 decorated captains. So we're going to talk about DeSoto, Picard, and temporarily Mr. Angry Jellicoe for the better part of 2 decades. Now, this was not because of his lack of ability as a first officer. It was due to his prowess at that specific role that he had, that longevity and success. And he was
Objection.
also...
Objection from Nifty Mittens, please.
To quote Jellicoe, I think you're insubordinate, arrogant, willful, and I don't think you're a particularly good first officer.
Rebuttal from Jenos?
Yeah, an excellent point. But eventually, Jellicoe did realize the error of his ways and enlisted Riker to do a job that he knew that Riker was the best person for that job.
Okay.
And what would this job be?
Strapping mines on Cardassians.
Would this be after Riker was a little smug bitch sitting in his quarters in his stupid robe, not willing to follow the orders he was given by his superior officer?
Well, it is also the role of the first officer to tell a captain when he's being a little bitch.
But refusing orders is different, and he did that for quite a while.
Settle down.
The orders that Jellicoe was giving to the crew were not in the best interest of the crew, the ship, or the mission. He was making the ship run less efficiently.
I'm referring to the direct order for the shuttle mission that Riker was to be sent on.
Well, eventually he decided to do it, but he needed Jellicoe to come crawling.
Good for him. He eventually followed his captain's orders while lives were at risk. Cool. Excellent quality in a first officer.
Interesting. I believe the objection was right. I am going to sustain that objection. I'm going to reward Nifty a point, however, for an excellent rebuttal and for some good debating, because I love a good debate here. I'm also going to give a Nifty a point. I'm going to give Jenos a point as well, bringing it to 3-0. Jenos, you have 1 minute and 20 still on the clock. Please continue.
Thank you. So Riker was possessed of enough foresight to let his career as an XO run its natural course before taking the next step to become a starship captain on his own, because he knew of the critical role he played on the Enterprise and its importance as the Federation flagship. In fact, one could argue...
Objection from Nifty, please.
His constant refusal to move on to other postings and take his promotion stalled the career of a number of Starfleet officers. Who would have been greatly improved in their careers by serving on the flagship, as you noted.
Who?
Among them, Commander Shelby, but who knows how many others.
Well, Shelby didn't have the opportunity to become a first officer simply because she wasn't well equipped to be a first officer.
We're not
only
arguing
elevated to Riker's
qualifications.
She was only elevated to first officer because Picard was assimilated.
Shelby's qualifications have nothing to do with this. I'm just arguing
they
that
do.
Riker stalled many people's careers by remaining.
Your argument is that she was someone who's a qualified first officer, but I think that you
saying many people were qualified first officers.
You mentioned that she was one person among that group, so I am impugning her qualifications.
I am going
on what grounds?
Ooh, go on. No, please carry on.
The grounds that she was only brought to be his first officer because it was a battlefield commission.
Because the opportunity was not previously present. Because Riker wouldn't get out of the way for anyone.
There are other ships.
There are, but there's only the flagship.
She was only on the Enterprise because she was brought there to counteract the Borg threat. She was brought there as an expert on the Borg, not because she was going to be the first officer if Riker took the new job.
Sounds pretty qualified to me.
I am going to overrule this one. Shelby's...
Quote Spock, Jenos. To quote Spock, insufficient facts always invite danger.
Interesting.
Very good quoting. But however, I am not going to... I'm going to overrule this one. Shelby or other first officers' particular career paths are not indicative of Riker's qualifications as a thing, so I'm going to award Jenos the point there. And Jenos, you have 1 minute left. Please resume.
In fact, one could argue that the XO flagship is more prestigious than the captain of any other vessel, including the good ship Lollipop, the Drake, the Melbourne. Eventually, those ships were all destroyed, so Riker would have died on those ships. And in the course of this trial, evidence will be presented to demonstrate his prowess as first officer and how he stands far above his peers, whether it be Chakotay, T'Pol, some XO from some Constitution class ship in the original series. I can't even remember his name. I think he was a Vulcan. He's going to stand head and shoulders above.
You have 10 seconds remaining.
I would like to also mention that he has a really excellent beard that he had for 6 seasons, 3 movies, and a follow-up.
And your time
TV
is
show.
up. Thank you for completing all 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I will award you a point for getting to the end fluidly and dynamically. Excellent debating, gentlemen. We shall move on to round 2.
How plead you, criminal?
Evidence gathering. So please present two pieces of evidence each. We will take it in turns. First piece of evidence, please, Jenos, to support that Commander Riker was the best first officer in Starfleet.
All right, and
Hold
this
on.
is
sorry.
sorry.
You ask your question. No, you ask your question.
These ones are not objectionable, right?
But there will be a period to debate it after you presented your evidence in which Nifty can counteract.
That was my same question. Thank you.
There you go.
Excellent question,
Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, that's a point apiece for respect for the court. I like that. Well done.
All right. So my first piece of evidence is protecting the captain. So The executive officer or first officer, once we emerge from the wild west of sorts of the TOS era, would typically lead away missions to protect the captain from hazardous situations, and he would also offer alternative approaches when appropriate and act as a sounding board for the captain when making a decision or evaluating a situation. So my first exhibit towards this presentation of evidence is William T. Riker, Maverick. So even before the posting that he's best known for, Riker refused to let Captain DeSoto transport into a hostile situation on the planet Altair 4 despite DeSoto's threat to court-martial him. Riker standing against his own captain, protecting DeSoto's interest even against his own interests, set him apart from other XO candidates and brought him to Picard's attention, which of course set in place all of the events that we have grown to see in William T. Riker's career.
So your evidence is that William Riker's previous experience as first officer to another captain preventing him from coming into danger. Nifty, I'd like to hear a rebuttal to this topic.
Well, it's true that, yes, he at times was very protective of the captain, as a first officer should do. He also many times was responsible for great risk to the entire ship, the captain being among them, of course. His libido was unchecked at all times. That frequently put everyone at risk, needlessly at risk. Can
you give me an example?
Atana Joel, the Katarian headset. Couldn't keep it in his pants. Nearly had everyone possessed by a game.
Yeah, so Tuesday
even, which honestly, thank you, Your Honor. You have made my point. That is a Tuesday because Riker just can't keep it in his pants and causes problems. The whole Soren incident, he completely went against his Federation training and had everyone at risk, caused a diplomatic incident. So yeah, he sometimes saved the captain. That's true, of course. He's not awful at his job usually, but he frequently put everyone at risk for selfish reasons.
Well, my rebuttal would be a quote from Spock's captain, "Risk is our business."
It is. That's true. And risk of, I want to bone this alien, is very unacceptable for anyone, let alone the first officer, on such a prominent ship.
Was Spock able to prevent Kirk's libido from putting the Enterprise at risk?
Kirk's libido isn't on trial here. Spock frequently kept Kirk in check.
This is indeed correct. Kirk is not relevant or admissible evidence in this court. However, on that topic, I think I am going to give the point to Jenos on this occasion. Riker did indeed show heroic qualities in order to save his captain, although him endangering the ship at times due to his libido was something that had occurred. It is also a common trait among Starfleet officers. Riker is probably one of the least problematic people in Starfleet. Your first piece of evidence, please, Nifty.
You talked about, saving a captain, showing that devotion, being, the hero that the captain needed. Spock frequently saved his captain and saved everyone on the ship. As mentioned previously, he literally sacrificed himself for everyone. And many times he put himself in harm's way over others, including with the Denevan neural parasites. He subjected himself to testing. Experimental testing to find out if they could save everybody. He many times had to step in and ensure that Kirk did not act too rashly. He was even willing to completely disregard his own self-interest, such as the Talos incident, where he was quite happy to sacrifice his entire career, even literally his life, as death penalty was what he was going to face. But he did it to save his former captain, and also made sure not to tell his current captain about it, thereby giving him all plausible deniability. He took the sacrifice upon himself only, to do what he knew was right. and that is an amazing quality in a first officer.
So your officer is his. Your piece of evidence is his devotion to his captains at almost endangering levels. Now, Jenos, your answer to this piece of evidence, please.
Yeah. Now, granted, he definitely has devotion to his captain, to his ship, whether it's a former captain or his current captain. But in at least one occasion, he nearly was the cause of Kirk's death, specifically during the time that he was during the Ponfar. He would have killed Kirk had it not been for McCoy's medical trickery.
That is true. And once showing his honor and devotion to what is right and to his captain, he put himself up for court-martial after the incident. He accepted that, hey, I have acted incorrectly. I should be punished. He was not selfish, unlike Riker, as I described earlier, having spent all those years selfishly standing in the post of first officer when others could have taken his place.
I'm not going to rehash I won't rehash my prior arguments, but coming after the fact and asking essentially for forgiveness or saying, "Oh yeah, I definitely did bad, punish me," probably shouldn't have tried to kill him in the first place. Which he would have been successful had it not been for McCoy.
Well, now you're trying to bring biology into this, and that sounds pretty racist towards Vulcans.
Exobiology.
Kirk chose to stand in that fight, so Kirk accepted the risks walking into it.
Okay, I'm going to award the point to Nifty there. That was a fair and valid argument. I would say the effects of Spock amok. No, not Spock amok. Spock.
Amok time.
Spock. Yeah, amok time. That's one. His biology cannot be counted against any misdemeanors due to the unknownness of his physiology. However, the Vulcans could be a little bit more permissive with their information. Might not have hurt. Jenos, please give me your next and final piece of evidence to support your case.
All right. My second piece of evidence is Riker, a jack of all trades. So Riker was frequently utilized in a variety of ways to help the Enterprise succeed in its missions, and his flexibility sets him apart from his peers. So first of all, we're going to talk about William T. Riker, diplomat. So on multiple occasions, Riker's skill as diplomacy assisted the Enterprise in achieving its goals. So for example, in the negotiations for the Barzan wormhole, Riker replaced a career diplomat, Mendoza, after he was incapacitated, and he was the top choice among all possible options available at that time. Also, early in his career on the Enterprise, his diplomatic skills prevailed upon Portal 63 of the Takan Empire to spare his away team and the Enterprise itself. Not much later, on Angel 1, Riker conducted a successful diplomatic mission against all odds, negotiating with a matriarchal world, a very difficult task for a male. While Starfleet or his captain could have sent a female officer or diplomat to get an in with his culture, that Riker's innate ability would bear out, and it did. Riker was also one of the first Exos to participate in the Klingon Federation First Officer Exchange Program, and he quickly and easily adapted to the KDF hierarchy and standards to diffuse a tense situation between allies in the Klingon Empire and the Federation, prevented a situation there. Next, we're going to talk about Riker, undercover operative and actor. On multiple occasions, Riker used his skill from both poker and his hobby as an actor to infiltrate alien worlds to gain intelligence and observe. In Mintaka 3, Riker assisted in retrieving a member of the Federation observation team. And during his undercover mission to the Melkorians, in preparation for First Contact, he uses improvisational skills to escape a situation where his alien nature would have been discovered. Last but not least, William T. Riker, warrior. Riker was a superb tactician and used his ability to motivate his crew to go above and beyond during, first of all, the war games with the Enterprise and the Hathaway. He was also a great improviser. Data estimated he only used traditional tactics 21% of the time, making it difficult for his opponents to predict his moves. And, like no other first officer out there ever, he has a tactical maneuver named after him, the Riker maneuver, used against the Son'a.
And your rebuttal to this evidence, please, Nifty.
He also had numerous instances where he failed diplomatically. He nearly bungled with the Romulans in All Good Things. He was very slow to act. In Darmok, he almost caused a diplomatic incident with the Tanagrans while Picard was down there, being his diplomatic best self. And so, yeah, he had some very near catastrophic failures of diplomacy, bailed out by his captain.
Near failures, but not failures, because he has a team around him and people that he trusts, team members that would assist him when he falls just a little bit short. But more often than not, he's bailing out his team, his captain, his crew using his skills.
You argue the team saved him, but the team, when it's the captain, he didn't choose his captain. He didn't get Picard to act. He was saved by Picard's skills as a captain.
You argued previously that he had an opportunity to get off the ship and get promoted. So in a way, after he got his very first option for a promotion, which I believe was season 1 of TNG, he did choose his captain. He chose to remain with Picard. He chose to remain on that ship. So he did choose his captain.
Sure. And then he continued to selfishly remain in a post rather than do what was best for the Federation.
I think the argument is that he was more valuable to the Federation being the first officer on the flagship than being the captain of the Melbourne, a Excelsior class ship, a Miranda class ship. Being the.
Please don't besmirch.
And they would have.
They are the workhorse of Starfleet, please.
Of course.
They wouldn't have offered these promotions if they didn't feel he was needed elsewhere.
I feel we're straying slightly off topic here.
Have.
I'd like to reroute your objections towards the jack of all trades, Riker. Nifty, anything specific to say about his skills rather than his previously discussed promotion opportunities?
I already mentioned.
Fair enough. I believe I'm going to give the point here to Jenos to prove that Riker, yes, was a bit of a jack of all trades. He had everything to give and everything to show off, even if maybe not always ended up in the right way. Nifty, your final piece of evidence, please.
You know what? I'll just. There's all sorts of great evidence here, so let's take a page out of your book there. Jack of all trades. Spock could do so many things that were useful in his role as first officer. You talk about Riker's skills as a fighter. Spock could literally just nerve pinch you. Spock had superhuman strength. Spock also has control of his emotion that allows him to remain more level-headed than others. And when Spock does lose control in that, he is able to pull himself back and regain his composure. Whereas Riker, being more of a loose cannon, isn't able to do that. He is highly skilled in science. He's even saved the warp core. He's basically been a de facto engineer when he's not doing science work. He is vital to the ship in this sense. And he even can play the Vulcan lute, whereas Riker can't even play Nightbird. And come on.
Can he play Nightbird on the Vulcan lute, though?
There's no evidence he can't.
Your rebuttal, please, Jenos.
All right. Well, I'm going to use some of your own arguments against you from a prior part of evidence. Is you mentioned that we can't hold his Vulcan nature against him when being under Ponfar. Well, I don't think we can also count it in his favor. So his Vulcan nerve pitch, which is a Vulcan technique, his emotional control, his telepathy, none of those can count in his favor if we're counting his Ponfar, that nature against him. So he's got to be on the same level as everybody else. We can't count anything that is specific to his Vulcanness in his favor or against him.
But those are trained abilities, unlike Ponfar, which is purely biological.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I thought all Vulcans came into the world having Vulcan control, having telepathy, having the ability to do the Vulcan nerve pitch. Is there any evidence otherwise? That they learn the control or they already have the control?
I'm not sure, but you can't just assert that.
Yeah,
It
we
is
are
inherently
going into
biological.
hypotheticals here. We only deal in serious academic evidence in this court. So I'm going to say, please continue a little bit more on this topic. If you have any more objections or any more concrete proof that Vulcan's innate abilities do not contribute to his adeptness as a first officer.
Well, I don't think that we can count things that are specific to his species as a trait, because there's nothing special about humans other than what their empathy, their resourcefulness. But Spock has the same things, so we can't really hold any sort of racial traits, in his favor.
Spock's own half of his race, because keep in mind he is dual raced. The Vulcans themselves constantly refer to Spock's emotion as a problem, that he is far too rash, etc. So clearly that is a learned skill of Spock's to remain in control. If it was purely innate, the Vulcans wouldn't have a problem with it, now, would they?
They do have a problem with him.
That's my point as well.
Yeah.
Showing that his skills and training have allowed him to have these abilities and not just being biologically perfect to do them.
Okay.
So your point does not stand, because this is not innate biology. This is also Spock overcoming obstacles
Interesting.
and still having these abilities.
I believe I am convinced. Excuse me. Nebula in the throat. I believe I am convinced by Nifty's argument. I'm going to reward him the point, which brings me to the end of round 2 evidence gathering, and Nifty is in the lead with 6 points to Jenos's 5. So let us go on to...
All present respectfully stand.
Time for cross-examination. You will get to ask your opponent a question, which they have to argue, and you debate amongst yourselves until I interject and decide which one of you will be the winner of that particular question. Nifty, would you like to begin to ask your opposite a question and cross-examine them, please?
Yeah. You mentioned before Riker's beard. It's a pretty great beard. Spock has a good one at one point in his career too. But the beard reminds me of another massive security risk of William T. Riker, and that is his clone that is running around unchecked until eventually nearly causing a massive disaster in Deep Space Nine, because there is somebody out there that can impersonate perfectly William Riker until he rips off his sideburns to show you that, aha, it's not a beard. So can you tell me about how that makes him a great security first officer and not a massive security risk?
Well, I would say it has absolutely nothing to do with William T. Riker. That's a completely different person. It had nothing. It wasn't Riker's fault that Thomas Riker was created, and it's up to the security of wherever Thomas Riker is to keep track of him. It has nothing to do with William T. Riker. It's irrelevant.
And yet they are, in many ways, the same person. And so this just shows how awful Riker can be.
We were stranded alone for 10 years might be a little unhinged. I think it really has nothing to do with William Riker himself. I think if we stranded you for 10 years alone, you'd be a little unhinged too. Same thing with Spock. If we stranded him alone for 10 years. Yes, thank you. Yeah, if we stranded Spock 10 years alone, he probably would get a little unhinged himself.
Sure, and I would then hope that what Riker should have done, Spock would do, is talk to himself, his other self, because who knows you better than yourself? And Riker just let this happen, essentially.
There's no evidence to suggest that they weren't in contact all the time.
Well, then he did a terrible job if they were.
Well, it's like they're twin brothers, and I, for example, have 2 twin brothers, and they are not responsible for each other's.
You have 2 twin brothers?
No, I have brothers who are twins.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay, carry on.
Yes.
I didn't know if we were talking to the real Jenos this entire time. You could have been one of the twins. Okay, no, that's fine. Please resume.
Yeah. Neither of them are responsible for the actions of the other. So your argument is moot, invalid, and is a piece of poop. Yeah.
I never argued that he was responsible for the actions, but that
you said he was a security. and that spoke badly on Will Riker because Thomas Riker exists and did something bad.
No, because Riker clearly does not do enough to aid in any sort of mitigation of this risk.
Is he Thomas Riker's keeper? Is he responsible for him? I don't think that's part of his role as first officer. I think it's completely irrelevant to his role as first officer of the Enterprise.
That is not part of his role as first officer, correct. However, when that security risk is out there and he's doing nothing about it, then
That's not part of his duties.
his duty is ultimately to the Federation.
It's not part of his job description.
Okay.
There are many things that are not part of the job description that people go above and beyond and do, as you tried to use as your own evidence earlier, saying that he, goes above and beyond in the line of duty.
Are there any people that aren't on board the Enterprise that Spock is responsible for? That he would be impugned for if they committed a crime? Is there anyone that he's responsible for that aren't under his immediate purview?
Are there? You tell me.
Oh, we wouldn't know. It's a flimsy argument.
Okay.
You keep trying to use these hypothetical what if Spock also had this problem, whereas I'm pointing out an actual problem that Riker had.
It's not Riker's problem. It's Thomas Riker's problem.
On that
And
note,
as
I'm
I
gonna
said,
cut you off there, and I'm going to rule the point in Jenos' favour on this occasion. I would say the debate is about Riker's ability as a first officer, not how he handles his family matters. Jenos, your question to your counterpart, please.
So, Mr. Spock ended up being the first officer for Willard Deckard. Or what's up with that? What's up with Willard Deckard?
are
What are we
you
doing?
attempting to use the actor's personal life issues in this?
Sorry, can I
to-
clarify? You said Spock was the first officer for
No, I said it backwards.
Willard.
What are you saying, sir?
He wasn't able to save Willard Deckard from becoming a part of the V'ger.
I'm getting the wrong.
Entity.
Wait, hang on. Spock was never Will Decker's commanding officer.
Well, they were on the same crew.
True. But
He's responsible for the members of the crew.
Will Decker was the first officer, Spock was the science officer. Sorry to interject
Correct.
your fantastic argument there, but I have to... You're talking
Yes.
the motion picture, and I feel very strongly about this.
Right.
But please,
Well,
carry on.
Q doesn't like the motion picture.
Q loves the motion picture.
He does? This is an equitable
I
court.
am telling you, Q loves the motion picture.
Of course he does. Yeah, so...
sorry. Please continue on. Sorry. I shouldn't have interjected there. That was very unprofessional of me. I shall go and...
No, that's fine. I'm circling my argument. So,
Okay.
Spock being such a a prevalent first officer, a fantastic first officer, why does he get demoted to science officer in that case? Shouldn't he remain the first officer in that case? I mean, why would you demote the best first officer in the history of Starfleet to science officer under any circumstances? Why would that happen?
He's not been demoted. He's serving a different function on this ship because this is many years past what has happened in his career as a first officer. Technically, Decker's the one that's demoted in two ways because he's actually literally temporarily given a different rank, which is kind of shitty, but that's not what this is about. And that is Kirk honoring the man who was captain. This is about Kirk and Decker. This has nothing to do with Spock. Spock is here because in his career as first officer under Kirk trusts him so much that he has him on the ship.
I'm going to say that is a clear and resounding point to Nifty there. That is indeed true. Spock was not a member of Starfleet at the time. And I am also sentencing Jenos to watching the motion picture at least 5 times in a loop so you can understand the dynamics of everything that happened in that film.
One quick objection to you, Your Honor. You're not sentencing him, you're rewarding him with the opportunity to watch the movie.
That's very true, but I also feel like that is... Yes, no, you are quite right there. I'll award you a point for an accurate accurate adjustment to my statement there. So please have a point.
Thank you.
It would be Nifty. Your second and final question, please, to your counterpart.
I thought we get one question. We can do up to 2 questions,
Up to
right?
2. You will do
Okay.
2 questions. You get thinking.
Oh, all right.
Okay. What do I want to?
Clive's getting restless. Settle down.
Okay.
Down.
How can you argue that Riker is exemplary in his role as first officer and able to be objective when he literally serves alongside love interests and frequently finds himself not able to separate that in the line of duty?
Interesting. Do you have an example of when that occurred?
His obvious love and on-again, off-again-ness with Deanna is many times an issue where he cannot see the clear and logic step forward, but rather wants to do an action with her in mind, not with the ship in mind, not with the captain in mind, not with the Federation in mind, which is what his duty is too. And yes, compassion is an excellent attribute. I'm not saying that compassion is Riker's problem, but he's not able to fulfill his role to the best of his abilities.
Those are just targs. Don't worry about that.
Okay, that's good. Keep those targets under control.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's out the window. I can't get to them. Yes. So a question. Yeah. So love interest. So Deanna Troi assigned to the ship as the counselor. Now, granted, he's not. Riker is not responsible for the personnel assignments to the Enterprise. Just responsible for the personnel while that they are on the Enterprise.
Agreed.
If Picard or Starfleet would have had an issue with them, serving on the same ship, given their, romantic history, something would have been done at that time. But, I can't think of a specific instance where his relationship with Deanna Troi actually caused the ship to be in specific danger, or that he held his relationship to Deanna Troi, whether it, on or off, again, caused any injury to the captain, to the crew, damage to the ship, loyalty against the Federation or Starfleet. I can't think of any specific instance when that occurred. So,
can you cite any examples, please, Nifty, to support your questioning?
Well, I would say that there. No.
Okay, simmer down. I will award although you are technically correct, there are a number of things you could have suggested, namely potentially a menage a trois, in other areas as well where the relationship did come into under question. I'm going to award the point to Jenos on this occasion, although I will congratulate you for a potentially leading line of questions. And Jenos, your second and final question, please ask your contemporary.
Yes. So I can think of an instance where Spock was compromised along with the other members of the crew, despite his ability to keep his emotions in check. Allegedly, there was the instance where he met with the botanist, Layla Kalomi, on the ship with those spores. And he was willing to throw his entire career away, just like everybody else, because of his prior relationship with Layla, and left Kirk all alone on the Enterprise to figure things out. So he was not being a supportive first officer, and he was susceptible, just like everybody else, to those spores. And the only reason that Kirk wasn't, because he loves no one but the ship.
Correct. And in fact, I think you made some good points there when you said, just like everyone else. This is not Spock's failing as a first officer in any way. This is just, well, shit. powerful thing, took control of everyone. Like, that has nothing to do with Spock. Because
the argument before is that his Vulcan control, makes him a superior first officer, but it didn't come into play here. He wasn't able to fight these things off despite his learned Vulcan control and his control over his emotions and his superior physique and his superior strength. None of that came into play here. He failed just like everybody else.
Right. I never said he was perfect. I simply said that these make him an exemplary first officer, and these give him the skills to be the best first officer. But he's not perfect. I have never said that. But he failed just like everyone else in that instance.
But you held Riker to the same standard that he failed. That he had many epic failures. Oh, this was an epic failure by Spock.
It was a failure by Spock, yes. And in the end, everything was back to normal. They overcame the problem. I never said that Riker is bad because he wasn't perfect either. I've never expected perfection here. So because Spock is susceptible, just like literally everyone else except Kirk, that doesn't mean he's bad at his job.
Not necessarily that he's bad, but he failed. He was not up to snuff here.
He's not able to combat this spore virus. So then the fact that Riker has failed means he sucks all the time, every single time, because he's susceptible to failure as well, right? So there we go. We both have shitty first officers. Thanks for agreeing that Riker sucks.
Wow. You guys should have picked better defendants. On that note, I'm going to reward Nifty the point on that occasion. Yes, spore-inhibited first officers are not related to their abilities as a first officer. And that brings us to the end of the cross-examination round. And the scores are Nifty with 9 points, Jenos with 7. Which brings us on to our final round, which is going to be for your closing statements. And just to add a little bit of extra flavour, you have 2 minutes, and all successful objections will be worth 2 points. So get them in fast, get them in correct. We are going to start with Jenos. Please begin your closing statement starting now.
So in closing, Riker had so much to offer his captain, his crew, and the Federation and Starfleet as large in his role as executive officer that he did remain in that role, perhaps longer than some might think, despite potentially a logjam of qualified candidates behind him trying to get onto the flagship of the Enterprise. But he knew where his talents and his expertise lay and where he would make the greatest impact for the good of the galaxy, not on some Miranda-class starship getting destroyed by the Borg at Wolf 359. It's sitting at the right hand of a captain like Jean-Luc Picard on the flagship of the Federation. So I will end by reiterating his ringing endorsement of that man. He is simply the finest officer with whom I have ever served. And I see the rest of my time.
You cede a whole 1 minute and 5 seconds.
I cede it.
You got to the end of your statement because you didn't finish on the time. Actually going to deduct a point on this occasion. And time is over to you, Nifty. You have 3 minutes and 5 seconds in which to conclude your case.
Which means he has to use all 3 minutes, right?
We'll see what happens. This is an equitable.
I was gonna say, what happens after 2 minutes?
That's a
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I like it.
Yeah, I'll have to go back to the people that organised this, and maybe we'll field some questions there. But Nifty, please begin your closing arguments, and we'll see who can get to the end of this. Begin, please.
Well, I'm going to start by once again quoting Spock: "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one." And Spock proved time and time again that is how he would always operate as the first officer. His devotion to his captain, his ship, the Federation, the people around him, was unsurpassed. And his not flawless, but usually successful tenure as the first officer of the ship in the storied era of his service is he could do it all. Again, he could do it all, and he did so with just constant love and admiration for everything that his role stood for. He expected the best out of himself, was the first person to admit his mistakes and submit himself to any discipline he may have deserved, which shows that he's responsible, not only when he is successful, but when he's not successful. A good officer knows when they have not done a good job and remove themselves from the situation, for temporarily, of course, when they can't do their best, rather than remaining there and serving to disrupt the situation and cause more problems. And he even is able to put aside, his personal life, and serve in this role where Riker lets his personal life get in the way. And yes, there were instances where Spock's personal life could get in the way, of course.
1 minute remaining.
But he's able to put that a minute for 2 or a minute for 3:05.
53 seconds now.
And so, yeah, he's time and again, he's the first officer, and he executes that role with amazing abilities.
And
He does the tough things.
Oh, you're still going. Sorry, count.
He does the tough things, the things that no one wants to do. You don't want to tell Kirk that Edith Keeler must die, but you do, because you know it's right. You know that your job is to tell the captain, this is what has to happen, sir. He doesn't make Kirk do these things, but he counsels Kirk when he needs to. And becomes his friend along the way, while also never worrying about saying what needs to be said,
And your
telling his
time
friend the
is
hard truth.
up. Well, congratulations. You got to the end of all 3 minutes in spectacular fashion, which means I'm going to award you a wonderful, just 10 points. Why not? You got to the end of that. And that brings us to an absolutely fair and equitable final score. So please,
How plead you,
our
criminal?
winner, and clearly, scientifically, equitably, the finest first officer in all of Starfleet, was, as determined by Nifty, was Spock with 19 points, and Riker slumming it down in the officers of Deanna Troy's lap in 6 points. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for contributing your arguments to this very fascinating case. Been a pleasure to have you both in the court. We're now going to swish over back into regular space and talk about this in more serious fashion. But remember, stay equitable. And there we have it. Thank you, everyone, for joining Prose and... Oh, do you know what? Do you know what the hardest part for me being in Pros and Cons? Oh, no, we're not doing Bloodsport, are we? Being in Pros and Cons is I've got so many arguments in the back of my head. I'm just like, no, you could have said this. You could have said that. I'm like,
Hard in the moment.
But do you stand for? Do you still stand headfast by your decision to pick Riker and Spock? Is my real question here, gentlemen.
I chose the correct answer. Yes,
Yeah.
I stand by it.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably the first person to go 0-2 in Pros and Cons so far.
To be fair, I think you're the only person that's had 2 appearances. So
No, all right, well, that's fine. I'm like I'm the Detroit Lions of Pros and Cons, which is fine with me. Yeah, I mean, I probably could have prepared a little bit more, and probably could have looked into more Spock stuff, which is I think where I fell short.
And I think the thing I'm learning is about doing these, because I think it's only like our 6th one doing this, is like picking the topics very important for like getting the debate, because who's the best first officer? You can go and there's a lot of generalizations, and I feel it could be more specific. But we had a lot of fun with the It's Got Star Trek guys, because I just said which couple would make the better chefs, and they had like much more fun time. So I think like fun topics would be more fun. But if you're willing, guys, you want to come back on and do this again, it'd be absolutely fascinating to have, fantastic to have you.
Sounds fun. Maybe a less argumentative topic.
Oh no, the argument.
Or a goofier topic, maybe.
Yeah.
all topics are argumentative if you're doing your job right.
Exactly,
That's true.
Exactly. We've got a poll in chat. Who won? It was definitely we, the viewers, won on that one.
Yeah.
But not me, because I'm not a viewer. I'm a host. Thank you for joining us, everyone. It's been an absolutely fun time. Thank you, Jenos. Thank you, Nifty, for joining me on another Prose and Cards. We will do one of these soon. Keep an eye out. This weekend, we are going to do Star Trek. We've got a couple of episodes on the lineup. What are we watching? Who knows? No, actually, I do know. I need to look because I have forgotten. Oh, yes. We're doing Latent Image, a very serious topic about the Doctor's failing abilities. And we have also got And the Children Shall Lead, which is going to be a fun one to watch along with us. So please come and join us with that. And then the following week, Stars is back from his holidays, and we're going to be playing Away Team. But as always, live long, prosper, and ta-ra.
What about you, Hooker?
Well, I was thinking about Tahiti. What'd you have in mind?
I was thinking about dinner at my place about 8 o'clock. Why don't you make it 7? You can help me find a place to kill some new plants.
Hey, wait a minute. How do I know you can cook?
Hooker, trust me.
Trust me. Now, where have I heard that before?